You won't be needing this space anymore anyway, my mother said, gesturing dismissively at what used to be my bedroom. Now it was filled with my sister Emma's art supplies, canvases propped against walls that once held my medical textbooks and research papers. The room that had been my sanctuary through years of pre-med studies was unrecognizable. I stood in the doorway of my childhood home, still wearing my white coat from my hospital rotation, my small suitcase forgotten by my feet. I had driven 4 hours straight after a grueling 16-hour shift, hoping to collapse into my bed and sleep for a day before heading back to complete my residency. Instead, I found this. Where are my things? I managed to ask, my voice barely steady. My research papers, my books, Of those old things. Emma appeared behind me, paint splattered across her designer jeans that probably cost more than my monthly residence salary. They're in the storage unit down on 5th Street. Mom and Dad got tired of them collecting dust in here. Besides, she smiled, that same smile she'd used since we were kids when she got her way. I needed the space for my art studio. You know, I've been commissioned for a gallery showing next month. Of course. Emma's art. It had always taken precedence, hadn't it? When we were younger, my parents drained their savings to send her to exclusive art camps in Europe while I worked part-time jobs to save for medical school. When she decided to pursue art full-time after dropping out of college, they converted our garage into her first studio. Meanwhile, I was taking out loans and working nights at the campus library to afford my textbooks. You could have called, I said, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. I would have come to get my things. My mother waved her hand dismissively. You're always so busy with your hospital work, Sarah. We didn't want to bother you. Besides, Emma needed the space right away for her new series. The gallery owner was very specific about the deadline. I looked around the room again, taking in the transformation. The walls, once covered with my anatomy charts and acceptance letters, now displayed Emma's abstract paintings. The desk where I'd studied for my NCAT until sunrise was gone, replaced by an expensive easel. Even the smell was different. Oil paints and turpentine instead of the familiar scent of my vanilla candles. Where am I supposed to sleep? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The slight tightening around my mother's mouth told me everything. Well, honey, she began, in that tone she used when she was about to say something she knew wouldn't go over well. We thought since you're so rarely home now, with your residency and all, you could just stay at a hotel when you visit. Or there's always the pull-out couch in the den. The pull-out couch. The same one that sagged in the middle and had springs that dug into your back. The one we used to make the dogs sleep on when it rained. I see, I said quietly. 8 years of medical school, 2 years of residency, working myself to exhaustion to make them proud. And this was what I came home to. A storage unit and a pull-out couch. Emma must have sensed my disappointment because she tried to soften the blow. Come on, sis, don't be so dramatic. It's just a room. You're never here anyway, always at that hospital. I actually need this space. My art is starting to get real attention, you know. Real attention. Unlike my work saving lives, apparently. I turned to leave, but my mother caught my arm. Sarah, wait. Your father wants to talk to you about something important. He's in his study. Of course he was. My father's study had always been his sanctuary, the place where family decisions were handed down like royal decrees. I made my way down the familiar hallway, each step feeling heavier than the last. I found him behind his massive oak desk, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed some papers. He didn't look up when I entered. Sit down, Sarah, he said, still focused on whatever he was reading. I remained standing. Dad, they put my things in storage. Yes, he replied, finally looking up. Emma needs the space for her work. You understand, don't you? Her art is at a crucial point right now. The gallery showing next month could be her big break. I felt something inside me crack. And my work isn't crucial. I'm in my 2nd year of residency, Dad. I'm learning to save lives. He sighed, removing his glasses. Sarah, be reasonable. You're barely home anymore. Emma needs a proper studio to create. This could be her chance to really make something of herself. Make something of herself. As if becoming a doctor wasn't making something of myself. That's not why you called me in here, though, is it? I asked, already knowing there was more. There was always more. No, he admitted, pulling out a folder. We need to discuss your trust fund. My trust fund. The money my grandmother had left specifically for my education. The one thing that had helped me avoid taking out even more loans for medical school. What about it? Emma's gallery showing requires significant investment, materials, marketing. The right people need to be there. Your mother and I have already put in everything we can. But I felt the blood drain from my face. No. Sarah, be reasonable. You're already almost done with your education. Emma needs this chance. We're not asking for all of it, just enough to ensure her showing is a success. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. First my room, now my trust fund. That money was left for my education, I said, my voice shaking. Grandmother specifically. Your grandmother would have wanted to support both her granddaughter's dreams, he interrupted. Emma has real talent, Sarah. This could be her moment. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never noticed before. The way his eyes lit up when he talked about Emma's potential, the pride in his voice when he mentioned her art. Had he ever spoken about my achievements that way? No, I said firmly, surprising both him and myself. I won't sign over my trust fund. His face hardened. Sarah. No, Dad. I've worked too hard. That money is for my education, for my future. I won't give it up. He stood slowly, his expression darkening. I see. So this is how you want to play it, after everything we've done for you? I almost laughed. Done for me? What exactly have you done for me, Dad? I worked through high school and college. I took out loans. I'm working 80-hour weeks at the hospital while trying to complete my residency. Meanwhile, you've spent every penny supporting Emma's dreams. Don't be bitter, Sarah. It doesn't suit you. I'm not bitter, Dad. I'm tired. Tired of always being the one who has to give up everything for Emma. Tired of my achievements meaning nothing compared to her latest whim. He slammed his hand on the desk, making me jump. That's enough. Your sister has a real chance at success here. If you won't help her, if you're going to be selfish about this, then maybe you should reconsider your place in this family. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. My place in this family, had I ever really had one? Or had I just been the responsible daughter, the one they could always count on to step aside for Emma? Fine, I said quietly, turning to leave. I'll get my things from storage tomorrow. Sarah, he called after me, his voice slightly softer. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just sign the papers. Be a good sister. I paused at the door. I've always been a good sister, Dad, a good daughter too. But I won't set myself on fire to keep Emma warm. Not anymore. I walked out of his study, past Emma's new art studio that used to be my room, past my mother who was pretending to arrange flowers while obviously eavesdropping. I walked out of that house knowing something had fundamentally changed. In my car, I sat for a long moment, staring at the home I'd grown up in. The porch where I'd studied for my biology finals. The window of my old room where I'd stayed up late reading medical journals. All of it felt foreign now, like a museum of a life I used to live. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Don't be so dramatic. It's just money. You're going to be a doctor anyway. You'll make plenty more. Just money. Just my room. Just my future. Everything was always just something when it came to what I had to give up. I started my car and drove to the storage unit on 5th Street. It was nearly midnight by the time I found it, Unit 247. The key was where my mother said it would be, taped to the inside of the envelope she pressed into my hand as I left. Inside, I found my life packed away in boxes. My medical textbooks, carefully organized notes, the anatomy models I'd saved up to buy. Photos from my white coat ceremony that had never made it onto the family mantle like Emma's art school acceptance photos had. Everything that represented my journey to becoming a doctor, stuffed away because it didn't fit the family narrative anymore. As I stood there, surrounded by the physical evidence of my family's priorities, my pager went off. The hospital needed me back, emergency surgery, all hands on deck. For a moment, I felt the familiar pull of responsibility, the urge to drop everything and rush back to help. But first, I took out my phone and made 3 calls. One to a moving company, arranging to have my things taken to my small apartment near the hospital. One to my grandmother's lawyer, ensuring my trust fund couldn't be accessed by anyone but me. And one to my best friend Kate, who lived in the city where I was doing my residency. Hey, I said when she answered, despite the late hour. Remember how you said your spare room was available if I needed it? Of course, she replied immediately. Everything okay? I looked around at the storage unit, at the boxes containing the pieces of my life that my family had so easily packed away. No, I admitted. But it will be. I'm finally ready to stop trying to fit where I'm not wanted. Come home, she said simply. Your real home, where people actually appreciate you. As I drove back to the hospital that night, I felt lighter somehow. I'd lost my childhood room, possibly my family's support, but I gained something more valuable, the clarity to see the situation for what it was. I was Dr. Sarah Mitchell, second-year resident in trauma surgery. I didn't need a room in my parents' house or their approval. I had patients who needed me, colleagues who respected me, and a future I'd built with my own hands. Let Emma have the room. Let her have their support and pride and attention. I had something better. I had purpose. My pager buzzed again as I pulled into the hospital parking lot. Someone's life was hanging in the balance, and they didn't care about family drama or art galleries or trust funds. They just needed a doctor who could help them. And that, I realized as I grabbed my white coat and hurried inside, was exactly who I'd become, not despite my family's lack of support, but because of it. Every time they'd chosen Emma, they'd pushed me to stand on my own 2 feet. Every time they dismissed my achievements, they taught me to find validation in my own success. I was done trying to earn a place at their table. It was time to build my own. The next 5 years passed in a blur of surgical rotations, emergency procedures, and countless cups of coffee. I threw myself into my work, channeling every ounce of hurt and anger into becoming the best trauma surgeon I could be. My small apartment near the hospital became my sanctuary, filled with medical journals and case studies instead of oil paintings and artistic dreams. My family's attempts to contact me dwindled over time. At first, my mother would call weekly, her voicemails always the same. Emma's gallery showing was a huge success. When are you going to stop being difficult about the trust fund? Your father is very disappointed. I stopped listening to them after the first month. Emma's texts were more sporadic but equally predictable. Photos of her artwork in small galleries, complaints about how hard it was to make it in the art world, subtle hints about needing financial help. I responded with brief congratulations when appropriate but maintained my distance. The trust fund remained untouched, dedicated to completing my surgical training, just as our grandmother had intended. You've changed, Kate observed one evening as we shared takeout in the hospital break room. She'd become more than a friend over the years, more like the sister I wish I'd had. You're stronger now, more focused. I looked up from the complex case file I was reviewing, a multiple trauma victim with severe internal injuries. The kind of case that would have terrified me as a first-year resident, but now filled me with determined concentration. I had to change, I replied, highlighting a concerning detail in the patient's labs. I couldn't keep trying to be 2 people, the dutiful daughter they wanted and the doctor I needed to become. Kate nodded, understanding in her eyes. She'd been there through everything. The nights I'd come home from 30-hour shifts to find more guilt-tripping messages from my family. The times I'd questioned whether I was being too harsh by maintaining my boundaries. The moments when hearing about Emma's latest artistic breakthrough still had the power to sting. Have you heard about your old house? She asked carefully, knowing it was a sensitive subject. I shook my head. I deliberately avoided driving past it whenever I had to be in that part of town. They're selling it, Kate said. I saw the listing online. Your father's business isn't doing well, apparently. I absorbed this information with a strange sense of detachment. The house that had once been my home, where I dreamed of becoming a doctor while sitting at my old desk, was being sold. Probably to fund another of Emma's artistic ventures. Good, I said finally. Maybe it's time they learned what it's like to lose something they thought they'd always have. Just then, my pager went off. Trauma coming in. All hands needed. I was grateful for the interruption, for the chance to focus on something that actually mattered. Dr. Mitchell. Dr. Thompson, the chief of trauma surgery, called out as I rushed into the ER. Multiple vehicle collision, critical patient incoming. I want you to take lead on this one. My eyebrows rose in surprise. Taking lead on a major trauma case was a significant responsibility, usually reserved for more senior surgeons. Are you sure, sir? He nodded, his expression serious. I've been watching your work, Sarah. You've got good hands and better judgment. Time to put them to use. The next 12 hours were a blur of focused intensity. The patient, a young mother of 2, had severe internal bleeding and multiple fractures. Every decision had to be made quickly but carefully, each movement precise and deliberate. In the operating room, there was no room for self-doubt or family drama, only the steady concentration required to save a life. When I finally emerged from surgery, exhausted but satisfied, Dr. Thompson was waiting. "Excellent work in there," he said, his usual gruff manner softened by approval. "We've got an attending trauma surgeon position opening up next month. I'd like you to apply for it." I stared at him, momentarily speechless. Attending surgeon positions were highly competitive, usually going to doctors with more years of experience. "But I've only just finished my residency. And you show more skill and dedication than surgeons with twice your experience," he interrupted. "Think about it. Application deadline's next week." As I walked back to my apartment that night, his words echoed in my head. More skill and dedication than surgeons with twice your experience. When was the last time anyone in my family had acknowledged my achievements that way? I thought about the young mother I'd operated on, about her family anxiously waiting for news. They didn't care about my family drama or my sister's art shows. They cared that their loved one was alive because I knew how to do my job. The next morning, I was reviewing patient charts when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was my father's business partner, Mark. "Sarah, I know we haven't spoken in years, but there's something you should know. Your father's company is in trouble. He'd invested heavily in promoting Emma's art career, and now the creditors are closing in. They're asking about your trust fund." I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. Even now, after everything, they were still trying to get their hands on my grandmother's money. I typed back a simple response. "The trust fund is legally protected and being used exactly as intended, for medical training. I suggest they look elsewhere." Mark's reply came quickly. "They're desperate, Sarah. Emma's last 3 shows didn't sell well, and your father took out loans against the house to fund them. They might lose everything." I thought about my old room so easily given away, about my belongings packed into storage without a second thought, about years of choosing Emma's dreams over my education. "They made their choices," I replied. "Now they can live with them." That evening, I sat down at my desk and began filling out the application for the attending surgeon position. Each question about my experience, my skills, my dedication to medicine felt like a vindication. I wrote about the complex cases I'd handled, the research I contributed to, the lives I'd helped save. This was who I had become, not the daughter who could be pushed aside, not the sister expected to sacrifice everything, but Dr. Sarah Mitchell, trauma surgeon, someone who had built her success on her own terms. As I worked, my phone buzzed again. Emma this time, her message longer than usual. "Sarah, I know we haven't really talked in a while, but I need you to understand something. Mom and Dad are going to lose the house because they believed in me. They supported my dreams. The least you could do is help. That trust fund was meant for both of us. Don't be selfish." I looked at her message for a long time, remembering all the years I believed that putting my needs first was selfish. All the times I'd stepped aside, given in, tried to be the good sister. Finally, I typed back, "The house, the money, the support, you had it all, Emma. And what did you do with it?" I built my career despite our family's lack of support, not because of it. I won't apologize for protecting what's mine. Then I blocked her number, turned back to my application, and continued writing about the future I was building for myself. Let them face the consequences of their choices. I had patients to heal, lives to save, and a career to pursue. The position of attending surgeon was waiting, and this time, I wouldn't let anyone stand in my way. A week later, I submitted my application and threw myself back into my work. The EUR was always busy, a constant stream of patients needing immediate care. It was there, in the controlled chaos of the trauma center, that I felt most alive, most certain of my path. Multiple trauma coming in. A nurse called out one evening. Car versus motorcycle, rider in critical condition. As I rushed to meet the ambulance, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a window. Blue scrubs, stethoscope around my neck, the confident stance of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I barely recognized the unsure young woman who had once stood in her old bedroom, watching it be transformed into her sister's art studio. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger. Someone who had learned that sometimes the family you choose, like Kate, like my colleagues at the hospital, is more valuable than the family you're born into. The ambulance sirens grew closer, and I pushed all thoughts of my past aside. There was work to be done, lives to save, and that was all that mattered now. The call came on a rain-soaked Tuesday night, just as I was finishing my shift. I had been appointed as an attending trauma surgeon 3 months earlier, and the emergency department had become my second home. Dr. Thompson's faith in me had been justified. My patient survival rates were among the highest in the department. Dr. Mitchell, the ER charge nurse's voice crackled over the intercom. Emergency trauma coming in. Patient specifically requested you. That was unusual. Most trauma patients weren't in any condition to request specific doctors. Details: young woman, early 30s, severe abdominal pain and internal bleeding. Possible complications from recent surgery. Family says they won't accept any other surgeon. I headed toward the trauma bay, pulling my hair back and adjusting my surgical cap. As I pushed through the double doors, a familiar voice made me stop in my tracks. Where is she? Where's my daughter? My mother's panicked voice cut through the usual ER chaos. And there, on the stretcher being wheeled in, was Emma. She looked terrible, pale and drawn, her artist's hands clutching her abdomen. The overhead lights cast harsh shadows on her face, making her look older than her 32 years. "Sarah," she whispered when she saw me, her voice weak. "I'm sorry, I didn't know where else to go." I switched instantly into professional mode, years of training taking over. "Get me her vitals and recent surgical history." I ordered the nurses, already examining Emma's abdomen. "When was the original surgery performed?" 3 days ago, my mother interjected, hovering nearby. "One of those discount surgery centers. We couldn't afford a proper hospital." Of course they couldn't, not after years of pouring money into failed art shows and gallery spaces. I pushed the thought aside and focused on my sister's deteriorating condition. Her pressure's dropping, a nurse called out. Heart rate 120 and climbing. I palpated Emma's abdomen, noting the rigidity and severe tenderness. "She's bleeding internally. Get an R ready now. Type and cross for 4 units. Where's the surgical consent form?" "Already signed," the nurse said, handing me the chart. "She insisted on having it ready for you." I glanced at Emma, who managed a weak smile. I researched, the best trauma surgeon in the city. Wasn't surprised when it was you. "Dr. Mitchell." Dr. Thompson appeared at my side, taking in the scene. "This is your sister." I nodded, already reviewing Emma's labs. "Yes, and she has severe post-operative complications. I need to operate immediately." He looked at me carefully. "Are you sure you want to take this case, given the personal connection?" "I'm the best chance she has." I cut in, my voice firm. "You know my record with complex abdominal trauma." He studied me for a moment longer, then nodded. "All right, but I'll observe. Protocol." My mother stepped forward, her designer handbag incongruous in the stark hospital setting. "Sarah, please, save her. We know we've made mistakes, but—" "Not now," I interrupted, already moving toward the OR. "Emma's my patient. That's all that matters right now." The next few hours were intense. Emma's discount surgery had been botched badly. Whoever had operated on her had nicked her bowel, leading to severe infection and internal bleeding. It took all my skill and concentration to repair the damage. BP's dropping again. The anesthesiologist called out. "Push another unit," I ordered, my hands steady as I worked to control the bleeding. "Come on, Emma, don't quit on me now." As I operated, memories tried to intrude. Emma smirking as she took over my room, my parents dismissing my achievements in favor of her art, years of being pushed aside. But I pushed them away. In this moment, none of that mattered. She wasn't my difficult sister or the family favorite. She was my patient, and I had a job to do. 4 hours later, I stepped out of the OR, exhausted but satisfied. The surgery had been successful. Emma would recover, though she had a long road ahead. My parents were waiting in the consultation room, looking older and more vulnerable than I remembered. My father's confident businessman demeanor was gone, replaced by someone who looked tired and afraid. "She's stable," I told them, maintaining my professional distance. The surgery was successful. She'll need several weeks of recovery and follow-up care, but she should make a full recovery. My mother burst into tears, while my father seemed to age another decade before my eyes. "Sarah," he began, his voice rough, "we can't afford." "Emma's medical care is covered," I interrupted. I'm listed as her surgeon of record, and I'll be overseeing her recovery personally. They stared at me in shock. My father's face crumpled. After everything we've done, why would you help her? I looked at him steadily, still wearing my surgical gown, the physical embodiment of everything they had dismissed and devalued over the years. Because I'm a doctor. It's what I do. It's who I am, despite you, not because of you. The weight of those words hung in the air between us. Years of their choices, their favoritism, their dismissal of my dreams all led to this moment where their precious Emma's life depended on the daughter they had cast aside. Can we see her? My mother asked timidly. She's in recovery now. Once she's moved to a private room, you can visit briefly, but she needs rest and proper care, not drama or guilt trips. I turned to leave, but my father's voice stopped me. We were wrong, he said quietly. About everything. You've become remarkable. I paused at the door, not turning around. I know, but I didn't do it for you. As I walked away, I felt lighter somehow. In saving Emma's life, I had finally proved my worth. Not to them, but to myself. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had found my purpose, my calling, and no one could take that away from me. The next morning, as I checked Emma's vitals, she caught my hand weakly. Thank you, she whispered, not just for saving my life, but for being better than us, better than me. I adjusted her IV, my movements professional but gentle. Rest now. We can talk later. As I left her room, I caught my reflection in the window. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, trauma surgeon, standing tall in her white coat. The girl who had once found her belongings in storage was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who had turned pain into purpose. Let them keep the house, the art studios, the family pride. I had built something far more valuable, a life that was entirely my own. 3 months after Emma's surgery, I sat in my office reviewing patient files when there was a knock at the door. My sister stood there, looking healthier than she had in years, holding a canvas covered in brown paper. Your secretary said you had a few minutes between surgeries, she said hesitantly. Can I come in? I gestured to the chair across from my desk, knowing how she moved carefully, still mindful of her healing incision. The office around us was a testament to my success. Certificates on the walls, medical journals neatly arranged on shelves, a window overlooking the hospital grounds where I'd built my career. I brought you something, Emma said, propping the canvas against my desk. It's not much, considering. Everything, but I needed you to have it. I unwrapped the paper carefully. The painting was different from Emma's usual abstract work. It showed 2 young girls, clearly us, sitting on the steps of our childhood home. The older girl was reading a medical textbook while the younger one sketched. The detail was remarkable, down to the determined expression on young Sarah's face. I found an old photo in Mom's things while they were packing up the house. Emma explained. I never realized you were studying medicine even then, weren't you? While I was just playing at being an artist. You weren't playing, I said quietly. Art was your dream. It still can be. She shook her head. Not like this. Not at the expense of everything and everyone else. She touched her side gently. Nearly dying gives you perspective, you know. I did know. I saw it every day in my patients, how brushes with mortality could reshape someone's entire worldview. I've enrolled in art therapy certification courses, Emma continued. Thought maybe I could use my skills to help people heal. The hospital's rehabilitation center has a program. I raised an eyebrow. You're going back to school. Yeah, taking out proper loans this time, doing it right. She met my eyes. No more taking from others to fund my dreams. The silence between us was heavy with unspoken acknowledgments. Finally, Emma spoke again. Mom and Dad are moving to a smaller place next month. Dad's starting over with a smaller company, more sustainable this time. They talk about you a lot, about how wrong they were. I know, I said. Mom sends emails sometimes. Dad called last week to tell me about a patient of mine he met at his physical therapy session. They're trying in their way. And me? Emma asked softly. Can I try too? To be a better sister. I looked at the painting again, at those 2 girls who had once shared a home and dreams, before adult choices and family dynamics drove them apart. Then I looked at my calendar, at the lunch hour blocked out between surgeries. I have 40 minutes, I said. There's a decent cafe in the hospital lobby. Emma's smile was different now, no longer the smug grin of someone used to getting her way. but something more genuine, more humble. I like that. We walked together through the hospital corridors, my white coat drawing respectful nods from colleagues and staff. Emma noticed. They really respect you here, she observed. I earned it, I replied simply. Yes, she agreed. You did. Over lunch, we talked about her recovery, her plans for art therapy certification, the small apartment she'd rented near the community college. She was learning to stand on her own feet, just as I had years ago. You know what I remember most about that night? She said suddenly, when they brought me into the ER. Not the pain, not even being scared. I remember seeing you there, so confident, so sure of yourself. And I thought, that's what it looks like when someone becomes exactly who they're meant to be. I stirred my coffee, thinking about the journey that had brought us here. Sometimes the hardest paths lead us exactly where we need to go. My pager buzzed, another trauma coming in. As I stood to leave, Emma caught my hand. Sarah? Thank you, not just for saving my life, but for showing me there's another way to live it. I squeezed her hand briefly. Make it count, Emma. Later that evening, as I performed another life-saving surgery, I thought about the painting in my office, about second chances and new beginnings. My family had once pushed me aside, but in doing so, they had pushed me directly into my destiny. I was Dr. Sarah Mitchell, trauma surgeon, sister, daughter, healer, no longer defined by what I had lost, but by what I had built. And that was worth more than any room, any inheritance, any approval could ever be.